600 million years ago, Earth was almost unrecognizable. The continents were barren and silent, their surfaces nothing more than wind-swept plains of stone. No forests, no animals, not even the faintest trace of grass or flowers, only the sound of wind across rock and the rush of rainwater carving gullies into lifeless terrain. Yet beneath the surface of the oceans, something remarkable was stirring. Here, in the dim blue depths, life was quietly shaping the destiny of the planet. The story of how Earth transformed from a silent wasteland into a vibrant, living world is one of the greatest sagas in natural history. It is a tale of survival, destruction, and relentless innovation, and it begins in the shadows of the Ediacaran seas. The oceans of the Ediacaran were worlds apart from the land above. In shallow waters, soft-bodied organisms spread like carpets across the seafloor. They had no shells, no bones, no teeth, only fragile bodies that looked like fronds, discs, or quilted patches laid out in the sediment. Creatures like Dickinsonia absorbed nutrients directly through their skin, leaving faint impressions behind as they crawled across microbial mats. Others, like the mysterious Charniodescus, anchored themselves to the seabed like alien plants, their leaf-like bodies swaying with the currents. These beings were strange, almost otherworldly, and unlike anything alive today. They lived in a world without predators. No creature had yet evolved the tools to bite, chase, or kill. It was an age of peaceful existence, a slow experiment in multicellular life. But peace would not last forever. Above them, the atmosphere was slowly transforming. Cyanobacteria and algae, the architects of oxygen, had been altering the chemistry of the planet for over 1 billion years. Oxygen levels were rising, and with them came the possibility of greater energy, greater movement, and ultimately, greater complexity. The Ediacaran period was Earth's quiet rehearsal, but soon, the curtain would rise on one of the most explosive moments in the history of life, the Cambrian Explosion. Around 541 million years ago, the oceans changed forever. In what scientists call the Cambrian Explosion, evolution shifted into overdrive. Suddenly, animals appeared with hard shells, spiny defenses, and sharp eyes. For the first time, predator and prey entered the seas. Trilobites armored with exoskeletons scuttled along the seabed like small living tanks. Some grazed peacefully, others scavenged the remains of the dead. Above them swam the terror of the age, a Anomalocaris, larger than most of its contemporaries. It hunted with hooked arms and a circular mouth lined with teeth. With eyes sharper than anything seen before, it was the ocean's first superpredator. The Cambrian seas were alive with bizarre shapes. Upperbenia, with its 5 eyes and strange trunk-like appendage, looked like a creature out of dreams. Worms, sponges, and strange armored animals carved out niches in every corner of the ecosystem. For the first time in Earth's history, the oceans rang with conflict. Survival now meant adaptation, speed, and defense. Shells hardened, spines grew. The rules of life had changed forever, and this new complexity was only the beginning. By the time the Cambrian gave way to the Ordovician period, Earth's oceans were bursting with life. Coral-like organisms began building reefs, while crinoids spread their feathery arms into the currents to snatch food. Nautiloids, ancient relatives of today's squids and octopuses, became powerful hunters, some growing several meters long and dominating the seas with their jet-propelled movements. The oceans were alive with color, movement, and new strategies for survival. But perhaps the most profound change of the Ordovician wasn't in the water, it was on land. For the first time, the barren continents began to turn green. Moss-like plants and liverworts crept along damp shorelines, hugging the moisture. Tiny fungi formed partnerships with them, exchanging nutrients and preparing the way for future forests. It was a humble beginning, but it changed everything. With plants came the first soils, and with soils came new cycles of nutrients and carbon. Life was preparing to make its great march onto land, but the Ordovician would not end in triumph. A great ice age swept across the planet, locking up water in massive glaciers and lowering sea levels. Many shallow seas, the cradles of marine life, disappeared. Nearly 85% of species perished in one of the first great mass extinctions. And yet, out of loss came opportunity. The survivors of the Ordovician would shape the next act in life's grand play. When the Earth warmed again, the Silurian period brought recovery and new possibilities. Coral reefs flourished once more, and armored fish patrolled the seas. But the real revolution was happening at the water's edge. Plants began to grow taller. They developed vascular systems, natural plumbing that let them carry water upward and reach for the sun. Small, simple forests of ferns and club mosses appeared, changing the atmosphere and stabilizing soils. And where plants went, animals followed. Millipedes, scorpions, and primitive arachnids became the first pioneers of land, crawling across the damp ground in search of food and shelter. Back in the oceans, fish were diversifying. Some had heavy armor plates, while others developed jaws. A revolutionary adaptation that would forever change the balance of predator and prey. Life was no longer confined to the oceans. For the first time, Earth was beginning to buzz, crawl, and creep on land. The silence of the continents were finally breaking. The Devonian period is often called the Age of Fishes, and for good reason. The seas teemed with armored placoderms, fish with jaws like guillotines and bodies encased in thick plates. Among them was Dunkleosteus, a predator that could grow up to 30 feet long, its jaws snapping shut with bone-crushing force. Sharks, too, began their long evolutionary journey during this time, sleek and efficient hunters that would outlast nearly every other group. But perhaps the most important story of the Devonian unfolded not in the seas but at the water's edge. Amphibian-like creatures began to crawl from rivers and swamps onto land. Their fins had transformed into sturdy limbs, capable of supporting their bodies in shallow water and eventually on land. Forests expanded dramatically, covering vast stretches of the continents. Towering trees and dense undergrowth created new ecosystems filled with insects and early vertebrates. Yet the Devonian, too, ended in catastrophe. Environmental upheavals and falling oxygen levels in the oceans triggered another mass extinction. Coral reefs collapsed, and many fish groups vanished forever. Still, the foundations of life on land had been firmly established. By the time the Carboniferous period dawned, Earth looked very different. Vast swampy forests stretched across the continents, filled with towering trees that could grow more than 100 feet tall. The air was rich in oxygen, far richer than today, and this fueled the rise of giant insects. Dragonflies with wingspans of over 2 feet hunted in the skies. Millipedes as long as cars crawled through the undergrowth. Amphibians thrived in the wetlands, and from their ranks, a bold new group emerged. The reptiles, with tough leathery eggs that could survive away from water. Reptiles became the first true conquerors of dry land. In the seas, sharks and other fish continued to diversify, while early amphibians prowled the edges of rivers and lakes. Life was everywhere, in the skies, in the swamps, in the seas. But the Carboniferous world was also laying down a legacy that would shape Earth millions of years later. The vast forests buried under mud and water became coal deposits, the very same coal that humans would one day mine to fuel their own rise. The Carboniferous was a world of abundance, but also a prelude. Soon, Earth would enter a harsher, more unforgiving age, the age of the Permian. From the first soft-bodied creatures of the Ediacaran to the giant insects of the Carboniferous, Earth had undergone a staggering transformation. Life had expanded from the oceans to the land, from simple forms to complex ecosystems. Predators, prey, forests, and the first great reptiles now ruled the planet. But the story was far from over. Ahead lay the Permian, a time of vast deserts, strange new reptiles, and the greatest mass extinction the world has ever known. This was only the beginning of life's grand saga.